Good night, traveler. I'm inviting you on a journey, but not the kind with train tickets, Wi-Fi, and cushy heated seats. Number, tonight we're heading somewhere where the word comfort is taken as an insult. Because we're among Vikings, yes, those ones with the beards, the axes, the myths, and a reputation that smells of smoke, beer, and something utterly foul. We all tend to picture Vikings like some kind of Scandinavian biker gang from centuries past. Leather, iron, a longship, and music like, well, you know. But today it's not a myth. Today we're going to find out why you wouldn't last a single day in a real Viking settlement. Not because it's scary, but because everything you're used to doesn't exist here. Instead, there's the opposite. Fish that smells of death, clothes that never dry. Rain is basically a 9-month concept here. And the word hygiene? They treat it like part of an epic poem, not an action. So dim your lights, pull the blanket over yourself. Maybe don't cower under it, that'd be too authentic. Take a sip of tea and let's move out. Remember, if you enjoy this nighttime journey, feel free to leave a mark. Like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which city you're from and what time it is. Maybe, as you listen to this at night, somewhere far away someone else is lying in the dark, already imagining how badly stinky the tuna is in the Jarl's hut. Let's go. So, you didn't wake up in a bed with an orthopedic mattress or under the hum of an air conditioner? You're in Norway outside, somewhere around the year 860 AD. And yes, this isn't a hotel. You're in a Scandinavian settlement, what they simply call our home. But this is not home. Oh no, you're sleeping on the floor. Although calling it hay is very poetic, in reality it's a mix of grass, wool, and old seal skin that lost its charm ages ago and now smells like a retired harbor seal. The pillow, if you can even call it that, is stuffed with moss. It's wet. Always wet. Like hugging a cold toad, it offers no support for your neck or your sanity. And here you open your eyes. The walls are wooden, crooked, black from soot. There's no light, only a narrow crack in the wall where the wind blows through like from the mouth of some old troll. After that fish breakfast, 6 other people are sleeping around you. One of them snores so loudly that you begin to suspect it's a battle cry. And there's a dog. Not a pet dog saying, woof woof, give paw, but a wolfhound, sprawled on your feet and reeking as if it just crawled out of a dead shark. So here you are, lying in the dark. You stink of sweat, smoke, and fish. Your mouth tastes of yesterday's beer chased with dried cod. You're wearing a woolen shirt that hasn't been washed since the day it was on the sheep. And a thought pops into your head. Maybe I'm still dreaming. Maybe this is a nightmare. But no, this is a typical Viking morning. If you haven't already run away, fainted, or begged for a sedative, congrats. You're still in the game. You haven't even stood up yet, and already you regret ever waking up. But it gets even more fun. A Viking doesn't just wake up. He opens his eyes suspiciously, like someone who already knows something hurts. The question isn't if something aches. It's where you try to sit down today and immediately hear a crack. It's not the dog, it's you. Your spine, having slept on the bare floor with rain as its blanket, is now protesting loudly with a crunch. As you straighten up, life is already stirring around you. One of your brothers spits a flea out of his mouth. He's not disgusted. On the contrary, he looks proud. That's mine, I found it in Vestfold, he says. The other brother starts digging in his ear with a knife. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part? He's going to use that same knife to cut bread later. You look around. No one is smiling because a Viking does not welcome morning with glee. A Viking survived the night, and that's good enough. Meanwhile, the air is full of some very interesting aromas. Smoke, old fish, damp wool, and the scent of a body that's only ever heard of bathing in legends. It's like a sauna and a brewery got into a brawl in a cellar. And now you stand up. Your legs feel like stone. Sand in your eyes, your mouth tastes like someone else's mouth. The only thing keeping you warm is this thought. Maybe I don't have to go anywhere today? Maybe Vikings get weekends? No, they don't. A Viking's outfit isn't a warm hoodie and sneakers. It's wool, hemp, ropes, and a heaping pile of psychological trauma. First up, a shirt of hand-woven wool. It itches, it burns. It smells like the sheep didn't just live in it. They gave birth to you right in it. Then come the trousers. No elastic, no zipper. Just a rope that every day squeezes your gut like borscht in a plastic container in your backpack. Next, a cloak. It's heavy, it's damp, and when you throw it on, it gives you a new back that's a bit lower than the old one. And now, the fun part, the footwear, so-called shoes, are nothing more than leather sacks that a Viking soaked in beer, dried by the fire, and handed down through generations. When you slip them on, it feels like your feet are already preparing for cremation. Socks? No such thing. There's just a rag that your body will drop by lunchtime. Now you're dressed, standing there in 7 kilograms of wet wool. Your head is buzzing, molds growing on your nose. Then someone says, "Time to gut some fish." And you think, is this a dream? Maybe this is Valhalla and I've come here for my sins? No, this is just a Viking morning. Just a Viking morning. And it hasn't even ended yet, and you already realize the day is still ahead of you, and it's only going to get worse. So here you are, standing in damp wool, salt in your mouth, a fresh louse in your hair, and you think, maybe I could at least wash up. It's morning after all. Surprise! Vikings do have hygiene, but not the kind you're imagining. This isn't a refreshing shower with ocean-scented shampoo and energy boost. It's a steaming pit that you share with everyone else. Yes, that's right. A bathhouse once a week on Saturday. Think spa. But instead of eucalyptus scents, there's boiling water with mud. Instead of candles, there's sweat, beer, and a touch of urine. Instead of a masseuse, it's your cousin rubbing you down. And he just spent the last minute licking his axe clean. There's a line, there's steam. Everyone just bakes together. Literally, everyone steams together like they're being boiled in a cellar, not in a romantic sense. Now here's the best part. They did have combs. And they used them to comb their hair, make themselves look good, scratch where it itched, share the combs, lose them, and find them again. They braided their hair, decorated it, greased it with fat or shaved parts of it. They kept only a lock of hair, like a warrior rooster's crest. Toothbrushes? Number. But they had a little stick with a split end. They'd chew on it to clean their teeth, or not, because the main thing was to snarl, not to smell minty. After the sauna, a Viking doesn't slather on some bergamot-scented lotion. He rubs himself with lard or fish oil, or if he's feeling fancy, oil with ash. Yes, ash oil. A concoction that smells like smoked mackerel on day 2 of a festival. This was the scent of status. If you smelled like a smoky ship, you were a warrior. If you smelled of mint, then either you were a Christian or someone loved you too tenderly. Everyone stank, not in different ways, but all the same, and bad. A mixture of sweat, smoke, sheep's wool, beer, fish, and more fish. And something you can't even identify but just want to flee from. And now, here you are, standing in line to get into the longboat with 20 other men, and you realize, if you're not used to Viking stench, you won't survive the boat morning. And if there are Viking women with you, hold on tight. Because they have their own methods, too. Women use cosmetics, believe it or not. Eyeshadow from soot, berry juice is ink. Their scent was a gentle hangover mixed with melted fat from a hot shield. And they were beautiful. Oh yes, mighty as can be. But if you're expecting a tender blonde from some Swedish ad, think again. Here a woman could break your nose, and then gently wipe the blood off with a moose hide. In the Viking world, Clean doesn't mean fresh. It just means alive after the sauna, with a comb at your belt, and not stinking so badly that even your enemies lose their courage. By the way, they laughed at anyone who washed their hands before eating. What are you scared of, your own flesh? They'd snarl, shoving a chunk of fish into the mouth of the doubter. Fish that had been fished out of brine that morning, lying in salt since last year. They saved water, only washing hands if something truly mossy was stuck on them. They didn't trim nails. They washed their hair with snow or rain, or simply rubbed it with the fireplace ashes. Yes, the hearth was their shampoo. And teeth? If you expected mornings to start with a bright smile, you got the wrong address. Here everything ends with, "Have mercy, brother. Please don't breathe on me." Sometimes they'd rub their teeth with ash or charcoal. Not to look nice, but to remove fish bits or to stop that sandy porridge from crunching. More often, they just spat and carried on. And nobody minded. Everyone lived like that. If you smell like lard on sun-exposed meat, you're one of the family, but if you smell of lemon, someone will either sell you out or eat you. After a night in a cramped house with a wolf and a brother snoring like an oar in a storm, you want something warm, something gentle, something familiar. You won't get any of that. A Viking's breakfast is a fishy blockbuster in flavor and color. It starts with dried or salted or cured fish. Sometimes all at once is one terrifying bone-filled chunk that seems to say, "You wanted food? Then eat." That fish is like a passive-aggressive relative. Hard, sharp on the teeth, and it clings to you even though you never invited it. Next to it, bread. Dark, heavy, dense. It isn't really bread, it's just a pile of carbs. You can't even always cut it, not even with an axe. There might be butter, but heavily salted so your tongue curls up into a knot. And if you find anything resembling cheese, it isn't cheese. It's an insult to cheese. Sometimes breakfast porridge is offered, but without sugar, without fruit, without milk. Just grain, water, and a live or die attitude. It's like a Spartan smoothie with no blender, no flavor, and some sand in it. You look at this fish, and it looks back at you. There's reproach in its eyes, so you take the first bite. Hard as an order, salty as tears. But you must, because a Viking doesn't whine. He swallows even if his mouth says no. And now you think, maybe there'll be at least a few vegetables? Number vegetables are for lazy Christians and people who haven't raided enough English monasteries. The one vegetable here is the rutabaga, and it's a symbol of suffering because it's not boiled. It's gnawed on with its skin, carrying that look of offense. Well, you did want to live in the past, didn't you? What about salt? Here it's not a seasoning, it's currency. You can use salt, but carefully. Everything's so salty that it basically means keep your tongue in your mouth. And to drink water, or the warm beer, or kvass with something already growing in it. Everything tastes of wood, mud, or that old metal barrel where once the mother-in-law was hidden. If you're lucky, maybe you get some sour milk. Thick like living yogurt begging to be left alone. And you eat slowly in silence, hoping that after this, maybe someone will at least pat you on the shoulder. No one will. Food for a Viking isn't a ritual of pleasure, it's fuel. Like putting fuel in the boat that's about to set sail and plunder the shore. Everyone sits quietly. No one's snapping pictures of their plate. Nobody's asking, what sauce is this? Because there's no sauce, only fat. You try to chew the bread, but it doesn't break. It springs back like armor. Bread here is not really food, but a metaphor for life. Hard, gray, and not guaranteed to be fresh. And now someone reaches for the last piece of bacon grease. Oh, that's when a conflict begins. No one says, "Go ahead, brother, take it." They stare into each other's eyes. If you blink first, that piece isn't yours. So, do you want a coffee afterwards? Ha, just kidding. Coffee can wait for the future. Here, at best, you get a half mug of warm beer that's seen more battles than you'll see comments on this video. And now you're full, if full is even the right word. But life goes on. They won't pity you. They won't ask if you enjoyed the meal because you're not in a restaurant. So you enter the house. The first thing you notice isn't the decor, it's the smell, because smells attack first. It's a blend of soot, old wood, sweat, wool, damp wool, and fish that's been lying here since the days of the previous Jarl. A Viking's home is a long wooden hall with no windows, no separate rooms, no privacy. Like a dormitory, but without electricity, water, or any sense. In one longhouse, 10 people can live. 3 generations under one roof, a couple of chickens, a dog, kids running around like tiny demons, and an old grandma knitting something that already smells like a past life. Everything is covered in soot. The walls are black, the ceiling low, and in the middle of the room a hearth with no chimney. Smoke just drifts around the room, like the ghost of an ancestor who hasn't quite decided whether to stick around or go on. You breathe it in and your eyes start to tear up. Not tears of joy, but a reaction of your mucous membranes. But the main thing, it's cozy here. Warm, dry, together. And if someone dies, you'll definitely hear about it. There's no modern bed here, just a hard wooden platform. If you're lucky, it might be covered with some straw, but even if it is, forget about real rest. Because on this bed sleeps everyone. Grandma, 2 brothers, a child, a dog, and maybe someone who just joined because there was an empty foot space. You lie down. The blanket is a wool cloth that smells of history, of sweat, and of herbs gathered during that raid on Francia. It's heavy, it doesn't hold heat, it holds you. If you wanted to slip away, you'd have to ask the gods. Sometimes there's already someone under the blanket with you. Not always a person, but at least someone warm. Everyone shifts in unison at night, otherwise someone falls off. It's like a tactical battle sleep. One mistake, and you're on the floor with the chicken. And best of all, if someone snores, the whole house snores. Not just noise, it's a Viking chorus. The man bass, grandma soprano, the dog in unison. And there you lie, eyes closed, your nose buried in someone else's elbow, body on top of body, another body above that, and something squirming on the side. And you think, is all this romance really worth breathing through someone else's butt all night? In a Viking house, there is nothing extra, and not much that's needed either. The walls are unplastered, just blackened wooden planks. The only decor is minimal. Maybe a shield pierced by an arrow, a sword rusty from years past, horns, bones, teeth. All that says, this is not the home of an influencer. This is the home of someone who survived. No furniture like we know it. Just benches that double as seats, beds, fish cutting tables, conversation spaces, and even venues for family curses. The table is massive, made from rough wood. If you bump into it, it's your shin that'll break, not the table. And of course, the toilet. There is none. There's one chamber pot shared by all at night. And it sits, let's say, closer to you than you'd like. The smell... Forget everything you grew up knowing about good smells. This is another level. This is a house that smells of history and is never aired out. Those animal skins on the walls, on the benches, hanging from the attic. They create the vibe of a hunter's den, where the smell of moose plus smoke plus sweat is not a flaw. It's the whole concept. Alright, now it's time to get up off that warm wool blanket and pick up an axe, or an oar, or a pickaxe, because we're moving on to why the word work must have sounded like a threat to a Viking. A Viking isn't just a guy who runs around with an axe and bellows. In reality, 99% of his time is spent working. Hard work, because you've got to eat and it'd be nice to put clothes on. And the longship doesn't repair itself, row itself, or crew raids itself. So today, you're just a regular Viking. No jarl, no title, no excuses. What do? You might hew wood, and not the pine from the hardware store. Real tree. That means chopping for 3 hours, dragging it for 6 more, then carving it for a day. And if you want to make a spoon, first you had to grow the tree. Or imagine you're helping with the ironwork, but you're not the smith. So you shovel coal, blow the bellows, and come away with first, second, and third degree burns. Your hands black, eyes red, nose on fire, and the sledgehammer feels like your self-esteem on Monday. Or maybe you're weaving a net. You thought that would be easy. Not after not. After 4 hours, your fingers feel like boiled octopus tentacles, and nobody says, good job. The worst part? No one asks if you even wanted to do this. Nobody gives you a day off. There's no word for I can't. Only, do it if you want to eat. And if you don't, you'll end up eating smoke and your own tears. Today, you're scent fishing. Of course you thought, oh, how romantic. Dawn, a boat, silence. But in reality, it's freezing, slimy, rotten, and there's an old man shouting, don't sleep, every 3 minutes. Viking fishing isn't sitting with a rod, it's hauling a heavy net, wrestling with the wind, not falling overboard, and spitting constantly so as not to jinx the catch. Net rips? That's your fault. Caught too little? Your fault. Froze half dead? Your fault. Ate rotten fish and got food poisoning? Well, if you survived, they say you're normal. And when it's harvest time, same deal. Bad back, blisters, everything aches. The grain fights back at the threshing beam. When you're done, your hands are like boiled squid with arthritis. Want to complain? To whom? Even the cow is silent because it knows soon she'll be yoked up too. And then there's construction. Not architecture, but more like, bring me that stone you can't carry and put it where it doesn't fit. You hear in your head, all I wanted was to be a Viking. And life replies, here you are. Now let's look at the part of the settlement that isn't yelling or swinging axes or stinking of fish. Quiet doesn't mean rest. It just means you're so tired you can't muster the energy to whine. You think, all right, the men are chopping wood, fighting, building. Maybe the women have it easier. Ha ha, sure. Hold this sack of flax. Go carry water from the lake, grind grain on the hand mill, bake bread in an oven that only works with a sacrifice. Turn hides into jackets, wash wool, sew breeches, spread fresh straw, comb lice out of the kid, and do it all with a smile. A Viking woman is the household engine, the keeper of the home, psychologist, doctor, and Google of the era, all in one. Without her, everything falls apart, burns, reeks even worse, and nobody wakes up the next day. Her definition of rest? Sitting down and knitting a shawl for 4 hours by firelight, smoke in her eyes, and a dog on her feet. But the Viking woman never complains. She just looks at you when you whine and asks if you'd like another flagon of mead. The kids don't rest either. From the age of 4, they start helping, gathering, breaking arms, tasting alcohol, and chasing chickens. They don't go to school. Life is their school. And that school has no breaks, no discounts, no rewards. The old folk? They sit by the fire in silence, watching everything. Do you feel that gaze? Now in their day, fish probably smelled even worse. Okay, after this labor marathon, where your muscles became jelly and your arms wooden spoons, a sacred moment arrives. No, not rest. Lunch. But don't get too excited. Food here isn't for pleasure, it's to keep you from collapsing or dying right now. So you sit down. Well, you more or less squat on a bench that sways like your mental stability, and start dreaming of soup, maybe a pie, perhaps some compote. Fruit drink. Number. In front of you is an ancient wooden bowl with something bubbling inside. You peer in. You see a bone. A chunk that might have been a potato if it were cooked. and an oily blotch shaped like a little boat. This is porridge soup. Not soup, not borscht. It's a mixture of breakfast leftovers, some of yesterday's sauerkraut, fish that's already seen two lives, and water flavored with the fireplace. The spoon is wooden with a gnawed edge. After 5 minutes, your mouth feels like you've been making out with a beaver. But you eat it because after all that work, food means life. It's not just refueling, it's coming back to life. Even if that life smells a bit like spoiled herring, nobody speaks. The family is busy, and tongues are figuratively nailed down. You don't argue with the woman who made this when she's got an axe behind her back. Sometimes they'll pass around beer or kvass. Warm, a bit fizzy. After a sip, you either wake up or start seeing gods. There's one bowl, sometimes two, but the rule is the same. Whoever is faster eats more. A communal pot sits in the center of the table. You reach for your spoon and suddenly feel someone stare. It's the Jarl's son, watching you root in the porridge and thinking, this newcomer is getting a bit too comfortable. Everyone has a spoon. Some get their own bowl, but that's already a class gap. If you have your own portion, you're either rich or a guest they don't plan to eat. The layers in the porridge are uneven, much like their political system. The top layer is just broth with a hint of flavor. The middle layer are the veggies. Sometimes at the very bottom you'll find meat. If you've made it that far, congratulations. You've beaten the odds. Some swallow warily, some silently dig to the bottom. Others fish out a stringy chunk of fat and look like they just won an election. There's no yum factor here, it's survival. And that is an achievement. After lunch you want to sit and nap, but you can't. Sleep is for the dead. So the Viking goes back to work, hoping to reach the pot a bit faster next time. If you were hoping lunch was a guaranteed daily affair, I'm sorry to disappoint you. On campaign or in the fields, it's more complicated. You could be rowing, digging, building a roof in the rain, and then someone suddenly announces, lunchtime. You pull out of your satchel a hard chunk of dried fish that smells like it's been with you since the previous world. And next to it, a slab of black bread that could serve as food, a weapon, or a construction material. You can salt it, but only if you happen to have a pouch of salt. Salt is like the survival wallet, and the best part, it's a snack on the go. You gnaw on something that really fights against being gnawed on, but it demands strength from you. So you gnaw like a wolf, no, like a man who has lost faith in anything softer than crust. On a good day, they might hand out meat. Not fresh, small pieces, but meat. Then everyone falls quiet, because happiness here isn't a Michelin star meal. It's getting a chunk of meat without a bit of cartilage in it. And so you finish eating, wipe your hands on your pants, because napkins are the devil's invention, and take a swig of warm water from your wineskin. You hear behind you, right, let's go. Time to finish the roof. And that's when it hits you. Lunch wasn't a break, it was just a reminder that you're alive. And therefore, you can keep digging. Great. Lunch was tough, but home is even tougher. After porridge comes the main ordeal, family. Family among Vikings isn't mom, dad, and 3 kids in matching pajamas. It's a clan machine running without lubrication or vacations, and with a light aroma of sauerkraut. 3 generations under one roof. Plus a few neighbors, a nephew, a slave, a dog, and someone who's been living there for 10 years with nobody sure why. The elders are not just retirees. They're walking archives of battles, curses, and beer recipes. They don't do the heavy lifting, but everyone works because they're sitting and watching. The women are the pillars of the household. They're not helpers, they run everything. The logistics, the strategy, the discipline. The mother says, grind the grain, and everyone grinds. Grandma says, today it's herring, eat it even if it's still swimming. The kids? Unpaid labor. They don't go to school, they learn to milk, to hunt, to not die from fish, and not to cry in front of their mother. Discipline means getting smacked with a spoon and an explanation. Why did you make noise? Why are you breathing that way? Grandma's nervous today, and you say thank you, because if they smacked you with a spoon, it means they love you. You see, in a Viking family, nobody's ever spoiled. Now let's dive into how this battle-ready household machine works on muscle and moral terror. Everyone here has a role, and roles don't change. Order is sacred because if someone decides to live for themselves, the whole house collapses and everyone is left without porridge. The man is the protector, the hunter, the craftsman warrior. Not talkative, not gentle. His love is not a kiss. It's a chunk of bread tossed into your bowl. If you're a son and your father gives you a look without yelling, consider it a hug. The woman is the logistics, the finances, the PR, the goddess of order. She remembers who owes whom what, who's wounded where, and who's feeding the chickens today. And you don't argue with her because she's the final barrier between you and the poison in your bowl. Children don't grow up, they grow into the system. Girls learn their mother's pot and needle. Boys get their father's knife and a thought about whether they'll see their 20th birthday. If you fall, don't say ouch. If you break an arm, limp on. Everyday life isn't cozy, it's constant motion. Drying hides, gathering berries, patching sails, fermenting vegetables, washing clothes, mending gear, cooking, smoking meat. All while training everyone who walks by. By the way, personal space exists. But only if you climb onto the roof and play dead. At last, some good news. Vikings don't have evening tea and cookies, but there are moments when time slows down a bit. Evenings after the workday, the kids aren't screaming, the dogs aren't stealing food, and someone, not you, is tending the fire. The family gathers around the hearth not to watch a series, but to listen to stories. The father recounts battles of the past. Grandma tells how one time the fish was so huge it surrendered on its own. Love isn't in words here. It's carried in scars and passed down spoons, and in a bowl of soup ladled just a bit more generously. They do have holidays. Yule when it's dark and cold. Spring sacrifices for the first harvest. They celebrate loudly with food, with dancing, with beer, and, of course, with risk. Either pure joy or a brawl breaks out. Music, yes, a flute, a drum, a singing voice that sounds like a wolf learning to sing. And you watch all this and realize they are together. Everyone's been through hell, everyone's freezing, but they're laughing. Because a true Viking isn't the one who massacres his enemies. It's the one who spent the whole week alive with his family and still hasn't drowned anyone in the soup pot. Good. Night is falling over the Viking settlement, bringing dampness, cold, fleas, and a symphony of snoring. You try to lie down, but there's no room. Someone has already stretched out like a seal on the rocks. Another is sleeping, sitting up. A third fell in a corner, snoring like a boat engine. You carefully lay down on the hay that already smells of 3 generations. Something pokes your back. Maybe a root, maybe a knife. You don't check it because moving might wake Grandma, and she's a battle unit. The air is like thick soup, heavy with smoke. Breathing is hard, thinking even harder, because every thought is, I want to go back to a shower. Someone beside you mumbles in their sleep, "Don't eat my bread." You shuffle away slightly. Even Vikings can give a serious kick while dreaming. More noises, more snoring, snore. It's not a dragon, it's Uncle Bjorn. He snores as if there's a bear in him playing a long horn. And there you lie, eyes open, afraid to breathe, afraid to move. And you think, where's the romantic Scandinavia they promised? Still can't sleep? Right, because a Viking night isn't for sleeping, it's for testing your nerves. In the night, any sound is an alarm. A tree snaps, someone falls off the bed. Did a raid start from a neighboring clan? Or maybe a cat stole the lard? Nobody knows, but everyone's awake. Uncle grabs his axe. He's not joking. They don't care who made the noise. They strike first, ask questions later. And even if it's just Grandpa sneezing, consider yourself lucky he's alive. Silence your sneeze. Then there's the rooster. His crow is the worst alarm clock because he crows while it's still dark. You're still sleeping, but it's time to get up. Row, scythe, or gutfish. No one wakes up gradually here. It's like being torn out of a fire, put in a wool tunic with no socks, with a glare that says, "I wasn't born yesterday, so why is it already Monday?" So you sit there, disheveled, eyes red, next to Grandpa, who's on his third round of prayers. Praying for whom? Maybe for you. Maybe for the fish they're going to serve again today. Morning again. The same faces, the same smells, the same reality. Now you have a choice. Either hang on a bit longer, break down right here in the hut, or wake up. Just kidding, you're already awake. Now we enter the chapter where weakness is no excuse to visit the healer. It's a reason to die quietly. Among Vikings, everyone gets sick. They live in swamps, eat what survived, sleep wherever they fell. Washing hands is a bedtime tale to keep the kids from becoming Christians. A cold is greeted as, "Oh, I sneeze so hard my life's meaning falls out." But if you just sneeze, you're not really sick. A Viking is sick when he's bedridden, refusing food or smelling funny or claiming he's seeing Odin. The doctors, so to speak, are midwives or crones. An old woman living out in a bog, collecting herbs, boiling disgusting-smelling brews, and saying, "Drink up, and if you survive it, you must not have been that sick." Her remedies are decoctions of swamp rot, fish scales, and the ritual spoon whack on the forehead to drive out demons from your sinuses. If you cut your finger, you have 3 days. A day of pain, a day of hope, and a day when everyone's forgotten your name. You come to the old woman. Yes, that same one who's lived since before 917. She blows on your wound, she whispers prayers, she wraps it up. If it's a bad cut, they sear it with a fire-heated iron, saying, "Tough it out, you're a Viking." If it's not too bad, they just leave it be until it falls off. Amputations are no myth. If an arm's useless, it comes off. If a finger swells with infection, the finger goes. If a tooth hurts, they knock it out, gently with their hand. Infections? What's that? Those get ignored until you start hallucinating and chatting up a horse. If you're lucky, someone might brew you a herbal infusion. Bark, moss, maybe an accidental worm, and give you half a spoonful, so you don't die, dummy. Now let's look at how Vikings were made. Without notebooks, without a call to the teacher, with very concrete motivation. Learn or survive without knowledge. Start at the beginning. There are no schools. Only life, and it teaches fast and painfully. Kids start learning from the moment they walk, sometimes even earlier. Falling into the fire is an experience too. Reading? If you're the Jarl's son, maybe they'll teach you some runes. If not, your alphabet is meat, hoe, sword. History lessons. Grandpa's tales, reeking of fish, smoke, and exaggeration. Writing? What for? You only need to know how to chop wood, hoe, hunt, cook, fight, survive. But you better remember it all like a newborn god, because if you forget how to tie the boat, tomorrow the ship's in England and you're left in the swamp. Boys are taught to handle their weapon, to control themselves, and to keep their mouth shut when elders speak. Girls are taught to run the house, watch the cooking pot, and stay calm even if their husband forgot he has kids. And so from dawn to dusk every day. No days off, no holidays. Viking education is all oral. You hear it, you remember it. Miss it? Too bad. If you tie the knot wrong, the boat sinks. If you forget, you go under. Then all are like, training complete. One less Viking. The main source of knowledge is the elder. Every family has one. He sits by the fire, clearing his throat, sniffing the air, and says, "Now I'll tell you how we raided Ireland." These aren't just memories, they're field manuals. From them, you learn how to sew a wound with twine, how to sniff out bad fish, how not to mistake a deathcap mushroom, and what to do if your pet viper ever bites you. Practical knowledge isn't a classroom lesson. It's like, here's a knife, here's some wood, carve a spoon. Here's a bow, here's your brother, don't shoot him. Here's a horse, don't fall off. If you do, the horse will be your teacher. And nobody says, "Great job, that was normal if you succeeded." If it doesn't work out, it's shame, laughter, a scar, and a lesson. Now what keeps these people afloat when everything is falling apart and lets them believe that even after death you can keep swinging a sword? It's Viking faith. Not churches or candles, helmets, blood, screams, and the belief that your death must be epic to be remembered. The chief among them is Odin, god of wisdom, war, and poetry. One-eyed, with a pair of ravens spying for him. And he knows what you did last night. The gods. Odin, who thinks deep and turns the wheel of fate. Thor, the thunder god, who solves problems, not with words but with a hammer. Freya, goddess of beauty and death. Officially, she takes half of the slain warriors. Loki, the trickster, whom everyone hates, but without him, life would be boring. These aren't distant deities, they're right there in everyday life. Spoon drops, Loki's at play, thunder rumbles. Thor's angry, a ship sinks. Odin's up to something. Prayers aren't like ours, they're sacrifice, screaming to the sky, meat and bones. Odin, grant us victory. Thor, smite the one who stole our ship. Freya, let me marry that Valkyrie even if she smells like dried fish. We've already survived fish and death and hammer-wielding gods. Now we come to the part where Vikings aren't fighting, eating, or working. They're living. How do they manage? Imagine long winters, 20-hour nights. Everyone's already fighting over the bacon. Grandpa's telling the same story for the 4th time. What to do? Sing, dance, listen to sagas. Vikings had art, not paintings or opera, but engraved shields, tales of exploits, and songs that sound like someone who just killed a bear and is now singing about it in a terrible voice. Sagas were their main source of knowledge and entertainment. Long stories with drama, advice, family feuds, and always someone died. And then he killed his brother because he ate his porridge. The Skald, the local bard poet, stand-up comic, could improvise songs on the spot, tell sagas that made everyone weep or fight, and slip in jokes about the Jarl to keep himself from getting killed for a bad mood. Everything was adorned with intricate patterns. Helmets, belts, boats, even spoons. Not just decoration, but a statement. I not only live, I'm leaving behind something beautiful and sharp. And there was real magic, too. Runes, spells, curses, and old crones who could hex you for forgetting to empty the hearth ashes. We've delved into their culture. Now, let's take a breather. In Viking style, of course. No spa, no Netflix, no recliner, but with mead, bones, and plenty of yelling. You think, at least here, they relax? Yes, but this isn't the kind of relaxation that makes you want to live. It's the kind that leaves you wanting to lie down and not think. Their favorite pastime was games. Not video games, but something like throw a rock at your friend and hope you don't break your arm. Simple rules. If you survive, you win. Break your own nose, you're a hero. Break someone else's nose, you're an even bigger hero. They had board games too. I had a Relatable, like Viking chess, throwing bones, riddles. But even in riddles, someone was yelling and something was getting broken. And of course, drinking. Can't do anything without it. Mead, beer, and something green that's been brewing since the last market. Drinking isn't for mood, it's for status. And dancing? They did it, but it looked more like fighting in time to the drum. Nobody knew steps. Everyone just moved so they wouldn't fall or miss out on the meat passing around. Now comes the moment when even the toughest Viking realizes. His sword is dull, the meat is gone, and Grandpa announces, "Time's up." Viking death isn't a tragedy, it's an audition for Valhalla. There are different ways to die on the battlefield. Awesome. Of illness, mildly embarrassing. Falling from the boat drunk, very embarrassing. Being accidentally killed by your own nephew during axe throwing practice, very, very family friendly. The funeral depends on who you were. A warrior might be burned in his ship in a grand ceremony with flames and weapons, so everyone in the village sees. A common farmer is buried in the ground with no fanfare but with what's needed. A spoon, a rope, a helmet, a chunk of salted pork, because hunger follows you to the grave. A burial mound isn't just a pile of dirt. It's a place of power. They might leave your sword, your jewelry, a piece of your favorite wood, and a note. If you find this, don't disturb. We will return. But the most important thing isn't how they bury you, it's where you end up. And here's the coolest part. If you died in battle, you go to Valhalla, a place where each morning is a new battle, each evening is a feast, and then it all starts again. If you died a normal civilian death, maybe you end up in Folkvanger, a quieter place under Freya's watch. And if you were, well, not so good. One of the gods might keep you here as fertilizer. We've traveled from waking to dying with sword in hand. Now it's time for the finale. Personal, quiet, unexpectedly tender. Because even in a world bathed in smoke, filth, and sweat, people remain people. You've lived a day in a Viking settlement. You woke in the dark, ate things without names, worked yourself sick, froze, went hungry, heard tales smelling of blood and honeymead, and then went to sleep under the snoring of 5 relatives and a dog. Now sit and just breathe, because despite everything, there was beauty in that world. Not the kind we're used to, but real beauty. Beauty in the way a mother runs ahead of everyone to the kettle to ladle more broth into the bowl of the son who spent all day rowing against the wind. Beauty in how the grandfather, voice cracking, tells the same saga again, knowing that tomorrow it might be forgotten. Beauty in the warmth, the fire, the bowl, the animal hide covering the old lady who didn't wake up today. Most of all, beauty is in hope. The Vikings believed that even if everything was awful and everything vanished, your soul would fight on in Valhalla, in memory, in saga. It means none of it was in vain. And if you're sitting here warm now, under a blanket, in silence, with light, water, bread, remember, once that was luxury. Someone fought and dreamed and died, so you could simply live to see the morning. Thank you for traveling with me through this night. May your dreams be soft, and if you do meet some Vikings, don't you dare steal their stew. They're easily offended.